You're listening to The Cultured Bumpkin, a literature podcast with Jake Phillips, where we present audiobook quality readings of the classics for your enjoyment. Thank you for stopping by. And remember, just because you're a bumpkin doesn't mean you can't be cultured. Hello and welcome to The Cultured Bumpkin. I'm Jake. First, I want to start this episode with a greetings from the U.S. to my new friend Andreas in Sweden. He emailed me, and we exchanged a couple of emails. And one thing he said was, "I found your proof rock fantastic," because he was looking for some T.S. Eliot and asked if I had done any. Will you do The Wasteland too? And the answer to that is yes, I plan to. In case you have not heard it, I'm sure you would appreciate the reading by Jeremy Irons and Eileen Atkins. It is amazing. I have not heard Eileen Atkins, but I love Jeremy Irons, and I've heard him read The Wasteland, like the quartets or whatever, and also heard him lecture on it. And I love his voice. I love his sense of aesthetic and all that kind of thing. And then Andreas also says, "I just discovered your Milton too. I look forward to listening to that one." Thank you. I love Paradise Lost, and I'm 2 books in. I think there's 7 altogether. So yes, I'm going to keep working on that. And then any Dante coming along as well. And the answer to that is yes, I do. I have done a short bit from that, but I do plan to do more. So Andreas, thank you very much for your email. It's wonderful to connect. And I do hope that you continue to find enjoyment in the podcast and the YouTube channel. So thank you for listening. Now on to today's episode. Now you may have heard the last episode about Geoffrey Chaucer. We read the prologue to the Canterbury Tales. Now moving on, that was at the late 1300s. So according to Beers, the 15th century was a barren period in English literary history. It was nearly 200 years after Chaucer's death before any poet came whose name can be written in the same line with his. That's pretty crazy, 200 years. So the end of the 1300s all the way up to the late 1500s, when you have several great writers kind of get their start, including Shakespeare, who everybody is very familiar with. But Ed Spenser is one of the next great poets in English. So the great age of English poetry opened with the publication of Ed Spenser's Shepherd's Calendar in 1579 and closed with the printing of John Milton's Samson Agonistes in 1671. Within this period of little less than a century, English thought passed through many changes, and there were several successive phases of style in our imaginative literature. John Milton, who acknowledged Spenser as his master, and who was a boy of 8 years old at Shakespeare's death, lived long enough to witness the establishment of an entirely new school of poets in the persons of Dryden and his contemporaries. So, from Chaucer to Edmund Spenser was about 200 years. Nothing of note, according to this guy, was written. There's a few little things he mentions, but, Edmund Spenser was the next great poet. 1579, the Shepherd's Calendar came out. And of Spenser's writing style, he said that he was a seer of visions, of images full, brilliant, and distinct, and not like John Bunyan or Dante or Hawthorne, a projector into bodily shapes of ideas typical and emblematic, the shadows which haunt the conscious and the mind. Spenser was, in fact, a great painter. His poetry is almost purely sensuous. The personages in The Faerie Queene are not characters, but richly colored figures, moving to the accompaniment of delicious music in an atmosphere of serene remoteness from the earth. Charles Lamb said that he was the poet's poet. That is, he appealed wholly to the artistic sense and to the love of beauty. Not until John Keats, that's one of my favorite poets, did another English poet appear so filled with the passion for outward shapes of beauty. I just read Ode on a Grecian Urn, and he's just like writing a letter, a love sonnet, a love song to a beautiful piece of pottery, for outward shapes of beauty, so exquisitely alive to all the impressions of the senses. Spenser was, in some respects, more Italian than an English poet. So he really loved beauty. And today, we're going to read a poem by Ed Spenser called My Love is Like to Ice. And it goes like this. My love is like to ice, and I to fire. How comes it then that this her cold so great is not dissolved through my so hot desire, but harder grows the more I her entreat? Or how comes it that my exceeding heat is not allayed by her heart-frozen cold, but that I burn much more in boiling sweat and feel my flames augmented manifold? What more miraculous thing may be told that fire, which all things melts, should harden ice, and ice, which is congealed with senseless cold, should kindle fire by wonderful device? Such is the power of love in gentle mind, that it can alter all the course of kind. My Love is Like to Ice by Ed Spenser. I hope you enjoyed that, and if you did, let me know. Email me, theculturedbumpkin@gmail.com. Also, if you want to be kept abreast of my longer things, shoot me an email, and I'll make sure that when I post an audiobook, which is every couple of months, I'll let you know. Thank you very much for listening. You've been listening to The Cultured Bumpkin, a literature podcast with Jake Phillips. Thank you very much for listening. I really do appreciate it. If you enjoyed this, would you mind going and subscribing and leaving a nice review on whatever podcast platform you heard this on? I would really appreciate it. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you next time.